Recording. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The next Wasteless Word Talks are here with Bill and Kevin and myself. We will write on the back of a language to the future. And the term today, it sounds very simple. It is title. And my question to Bill, if you close your eyes and you think about the term title, what came first to your mind, Bill?
Well, being a writer, it's the entrance to a new novel. The next thought right behind it was nobility, a title, what people call you, what you call yourself, maybe.
What about you, Kevin?
After working in advertising for 20 years, in an industry which loves titles, when I close my eyes, I think of working in Germany, where as a nation, they also love titles. So you had the worst of both. And so the squabbles that would break out if somebody saw somebody else's business card and they had a longer title than theirs. It caused so much friction and upset, this hierarchy, crazy hierarchy of titles. But hours of fun. And do you know what? I find it so interesting about, working in Germany. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the German landowners were not that wealthy. And so they were fairly reluctant to give their workers and their tenants, or anybody who was doing anything for them, a pay rise. So instead, they would offer them a title. And so if you were a postman for 15 years and you asked the local guy, if you can have a pay rise, well, you could have a pay rise, or you could be the chief letter. The Germans would always go for the title.
And unfortunately, in my country, for example, the people pay still a lot of attention to being ink engineer or whatever, all these titles. Some of them doctor, some of them are very, very sensitive about using the title. My dentist called me all the time engineer. I am not engineer. I told her so many times. And she said, but Mr. Rada, you came all the time with your tie on and you are for me an engineer. She never accepted that I am not a one. And just now we have a new minister of whatever, I think defense, I don't know, it doesn't matter. And she studied in France and she get a title, but this title is not accepted in Czech Republic, but she used it. So it was quite interesting story as she rejected at the end after using it for 20 years. Then she said, I don't have it, and she doesn't write it anymore. But it was quite interesting story. But if speaking about the titles, I have this discussion in the noon, of course, so I am prepared for you. Bill, what was the most valuable title for you, which you have during your life?
Human.
And
it's funny because some people, you talk about business cards, some people will put their degrees on there. So it would be Bill McLean, BS or Bachelor of Science. BS probably fits better. And then MBA, BS, MBA, whatever. And boy, I really don't like that. I mean, it's very off-putting to me. Like, look at me, I'm special. I went to school, or or whatever. But your title of human that you introduced me to is my favorite. And I am most proud of that. I am most proud of not being put in in a little category over here, or trying to be better than everybody else. See, I have longer titles than you have. Right?
what about you, Kevin? Was there any or is there any title?
Well, it wasn't so much a title. It was I was working at Meta in Berlin, and they had what Bill was talking about. They said, "Listen, let's drop the title, but because we're a design company, let you can all have you're all allowed to put your own personal sentence on your business card." And so then everyone was thinking, "Oh, what should it have to be something clever, and it had to be about design, and all this stuff." And I wasn't interested in engaging in this at all. So I had on mine, "Don't step on my blue suede shoes." I was so proud of this. And all the Germans, they just looked at me and said, "We think you missed the point." But I didn't miss the point at all.
It was
That's
interesting
good.
in the noon. Charito, she's from Philippines. She said, "Mother, mother is I'm the mostly proud." And there was Leslie. She's a writer as well from the US, and she said some of the titles. But then she came in the next question. She came back and said, "No, I will change my answer." And she explained that she has four grandchildren, and because the parents they don't have time, so she was. They call her Uber Granny. And she said it's the most valuable for me. She has even a printed label of that, and especially she remembered that because she has a, I think, heart stroke or brain stroke, and she lost one eyesight. And she said, recently I went to doctor, and my youngest grandchild drive me in, and he said, "Granny, I am your Uber today." And she was so proud of that. So it's quite interesting that we have this. And you mentioned at the beginning, Bill, that for you, a book or a novel or a chapter begins with a title. And there was a Tracy, she's from US, and she said, "I write the entire article, and then I am looking for a title, and it's very, very hard." So it's quite interesting. I write first title. What about you, Kevin? Do you write first title?
Yeah, yes, yeah. It may change halfway through, but I always start with the title.
Yeah, that's the same with me. I start with a title that I think encapsulates what I'm trying to get across. But by the time I've developed the whole book, then I oftentimes will either add a subtitle, modify the title. Um, it, it's a growing sort of thing, and it never stays the same forever.
Do you think
Yeah,
that, yes, Kevin?
but it has to have a title to begin with because it has to have a personality, and the title is a part of that. You know, you're not working on the new book; you're working on whatever the title is.
I think you mentioned once, Kevin, that in the art school, you make a drawings which you don't know what it was at the beginning, but you realize it at the end. And there was one comment that in the galleries, there are more and more paintings with no names, with no titles, because they try to somehow push the visitor to imagine whatever it will be. It's quite interesting. Quite interesting. But I need a title the same as you. I need a title because this is the indicator and then it flows.
My my mother, I think I've mentioned before, was an artist, quite a good artist. And I remember one day I came home from school, and over the mantle she had this canvas, and she had her paintbrush in her teeth like that, and her palette here with the different colors. And I looked at it, I said, "Mom, what is that?" And she looked at it, and she looked at me and said, "I don't know." She was just so connected with her feelings, and it just went from her heart to her hands without engaging her mind. And about a month later, she said to me, "I know what that was. I know what that is. It's the bush outside the front door with the with the last snow of the season. So there's a lot of yellows and whites and so on. Um, and sometimes I think that's how I write. So I do always get a title first, but sometimes I'm going someplace and I don't know where I'm going. Does that make sense?
It makes. I'm all the time surprised when I read my 4 month old postcards. I'm every time surprised. How can I write something like that? What is happening today, 4 months ago? And it's so interesting to watch it, to feel it. And when I do drawings, I do so special geometric, whatever. So it's a really special type of drawings only. I never know at the beginning what it will be. Never. But I can read what was my feeling during the drawing. So I make it, for example, I don't make notes on a notebook or so. I just make a drawings, and I do remember that the Japanese hate this style because they thought that I am not there in the room, but I was there.
The last book it's not finished yet, but it takes place in 1918 and 1919 in Europe against the background of the Spanish influenza. And in Germany, where the story takes place, they called the Spanish influenza the Spanish lady. And so I gave the title of the book The Spanish Lady's Kiss, because if you get kissed by a Spanish lady, you will catch the flu and probably die. And so I worked all the way through with this. And then the editor read it and she said, yeah, it's really great, but the title is completely wrong. You need a new title. And I hadn't thought about this at all. I said, why? He said, well, because the Spanish flu is there, but it's in the background. It can't be the title of the book. I said, oh, what should it be called then? He said, well, call it The Russian Lady. So now it's The Russian Lady. Because it's about a Russian spy. So.
Do you think that the business world and the politics and so on can live without titles?
No.
No way.
No. It's their self-definition. It's no, politicians have to have a title.
It's almost more important than their name. I think it's interesting that I was just thinking, when does a name end and the title begin? And certainly the politicians, the name, the title has to be, it almost has to be, the title has to be bigger than their name.
I do remember when my last business card at a Japanese corporation has been made. We have quite a long discussion with my boss, with my Japanese boss, about the size letters of the name and the size letters of the title. And it was quite interesting because he thought the name is not as important as the title. So the title was with bigger letters. And I said, but I want the people to remember my name, not the title itself. And of course, the name of the company was with the biggest letters. So, but it was quite interesting, the approach. He explained to me that the title must be visible from a bigger distance when you have it as a badge or on the T-shirt or so, that the people should read your title. But it was quite interesting discussion at the time. I just came to it right now and do remember that it was quite a different approach from my own approach. So,
and it's the same thing for writers, I think. If I am not well known, then the title is bigger. But if I am a famous writer, my name is bigger because that's what attracts the people.
and can this approach helps in building wasteless world?
Well, in our book, Our Wasteless World, that's much bigger font size than the writer.
No, I mean,
Because
I mean, the approach. So if we call the things, if we write it with the titles like the 6R methodology or whatever, the tools which we have and so on in bigger letters, then explaining like the Industry 5.0 accreditation of the universities. Will it be more acceptable or more understandable for the people than the explanation what we mean? I don't know. I am just now thinking aloud what if this approach can somehow contribute to the understanding what we are doing here. And I'm not sure.
I think that if you look at a lot of things, a lot of books and movies, especially, there's the title, but there's also the subtitle. And the easier it is for people to understand what's happening, in theory, the more successful or the better the thing will be accepted. So I think that the other discussion is, a title should never be more than 5 words. I mean, who cares? It should be as long as it needs to be, as long as it has a tough job to do, especially these days. And so break all the rules and use the words to the best of their ability.
I have to say that when I put the title human on my business card, it was a very strange feeling, especially if you hand it over for the first time to someone. And then you learn that they accept it, not only accept it, they start to talk to you directly with no matter whether it's a president or a cleaning lady. That's interesting part about it. I think the titles can open the doors, but I think as well that we should value more, I think Charito call it the unofficial titles like mothers, fathers, human, and similar, because it express something much more deeper than just the education level or the status in the politics or in the society and so on. So maybe this may help to understand better what we are doing, who we are. I think the title should say who we are if we speak about the personal title.
But I've been in lots of meetings, and I've rarely been in a business meeting where people will wear a tag and say who they are or what they are. And I think the nice thing is, if you go into a meeting, then you're reading the person. You're not reading their title. Mm-hmm. And I think that's much, much nicer, because then everybody approaches each other equally.
Well, the title with a company, the title is something that the organization has allowed you to wear. It comes from outside. It comes from the organization. If you put a title on your name tag, your business card, that says human or mother, that's how I define myself. Mm-hmm. And so it comes from within. So it's a much more personal way to say who I am.
And I think we are in the age where this personal statement become much more valuable than before. Again, I have to connect it to COVID general, because I think that COVID was a really big game changer in the behavior of people. But still the people are not prepared for this. They are not prepared to, because if you put there father, mother, or human, you are opening yourself to the others. If there is an engineer, you are open just to the engineers because they know you will speak the engineer language, fine. But you are close to doctor because doctor will speak another language. So I will try to work with it because it's quite interesting. And even the noon discussion, it was very emotional for me, because many people says, same as you, Bill, that human is the most valuable for them. And it's, of course, for me, it's an emotional thing. It's an emotional thing. So,
and one interesting title, some choose and some don't, but it will last for a couple of hundred years, is the title on your gravestone. And that's
Say that again, Kevin.
It's the title on your gravestone. So many people choose to have what they did on their gravestone. I'm not sure being an advertiser would be worthwhile mentioning.
But it's quite interesting because you are right that this gravestone will stay there for quite a long, long time.
Yeah, it's going to define you for 2 or 3 generations.
I'm not going to have a gravestone. I, that's such a waste. It's such a waste. You're using land that cannot be used for anything else. After the first couple of years, nobody comes to see you. I do not want to be remembered like that. The question or this word, this conversation, reminds me of something that we talked about before. When I used to, when I meet somebody in a networking meeting or whatever, and you say, you stick out your hand and say, "Hi, my name's Bill. What do you do?" Right? And then they automatically respond with their position at the company, and it's a very one-dimensional or two-dimensional kind of discussion that you then have. So what I did the last several years of is when I met someone new, I would stick out my hand and say, "So what do you do for fun?" I would just put the "for fun" on it, and immediately oh, wait a minute, that's not what I was expecting to hear, but I can answer that question. And then they would talk about hiking or being with their children or grandchildren. So, completely different conversation.
And
And
that's
the other thing is,
exactly, and
go
that's
ahead.
exactly with the term human on the business card. They don't speak
Yes,
about your work. They don't speak about you or them.
yes.
They just start to speak. It's so interesting. They just start to speak.
And they like to do it, right? They love being in this conversation where I don't have to justify why I get a paycheck or why they don't have to justify that. They have to discuss what brings them joy. And everybody likes to talk about what makes them happy.
I just have
So,
today and yesterday interesting visitor here and discussion. And one of the members in the network and of the Onichemos, she said she's preparing for a new newsletter on LinkedIn. So she would like to. She's a mentor. She would like to become more visible. And we talk about newsletter because she has about 10,000 connections already, which is quite interesting number. And so we spoke about it, and we thought about the name of the newsletter because I don't know if you know it, you will probably never use it, but if you have enough connections, the first newsletter you write, but only the first one, will be sent to all your connections. So if you will publish a new book and you have a lot of connections and you write about it in the very first one, it will be sent to all your connections. So it can be quite a strong marketing tool. Now the second one. The second one will be sent only to subscribers. So you have only one shot to get the people interested. And because she is a mentor and she's aiming for men in 50s or older who are successful already, who has money and power and everything, the only what they don't have is freedom or a calm time. And we have been thinking about the name of the newsletter. And we came to something, I will right now translate it wrongly, but I will try to be as accurate. The calm state of success, something like that. And it takes us quite a long time to came to the title, and then it came, and immediately we know it's the right one. So it is quite interesting that I think that you cannot decide the education or the great title yourself. Somebody else is giving you the title. But the other one, the human or mother or father, it's you. And that's so interesting.
I would rather people, after I've met them, would remember me as how I see me, rather than remembering me as, well, he probably works in that big building in a corner office, right? What was that? So I like that. On a related note, there has been a movement here in this country for the last decade, maybe other places, that when you sign your name, then you put adjectives in parentheses afterwards. So I would say Bill McLean, he, him, uh, whatever else. And I don't know if that's an offshoot of the diversity, or you just want, because if you look at me, I'm, you know, most everybody you can tell. And if you can't tell, I mean, who cares anyhow, right? I don't care if you're, boy, girl, in between, however you define yourself. And that's what this is all about, is how do we define ourselves so we can make an introduction? My name's Bill and I'm human.
You know,
Or yeah, instead of saying I'm Bill and I'm gay, or I'm Bill and you can't tell, but I'm a guy. Uh, you know, that's just so weird. That's just so weird. So I am not a proponent of uh, he, him, and all those other things that people put on there. But big universities and a lot of big companies insist on that.
there is in Czech, so as in Russian, and I think maybe in Polish, Slovak, these Slovenian languages, we differentiate through the surname. I am Michael Rada, but my wife is Radova. And I think in
Yeah.
Russian it's very similar. So this ova
Yes.
at the end or similar, it made so immediately you recognize. But there is a movement for a few 5 years or so that they would like the women to have same surname as the man, so Rada, which then will be confusing. On the other hand, we do not have so many first names which sounds exactly the same for men and women. So we still will be able probably to recognize that. But we are losing this ability to recognize it immediately.
And maybe that's a good thing.
Why do you introduce yourself with your sexual preferences? I mean, I would much rather someone say, "Hello, I steal sheep." I think that would be much more interesting.
Or I eat broccoli.
Yeah.
uh, it's kind of amazing when to think this is what's important to society.
Yeah.
Is I need to know whether or not you're a boy or a girl. You tell me.
And you can find it in on many forums already, which are online. You should choose which one you prefer to be named. It's strange to me. It's strange to me, really.
Yeah. And then when you're filling out a form like that, they tie themselves up in knots. So there's male, female, and BTW, Y is male always first, and then female. But male, female, not sure, it's none of your business. And so they'll have five more. Like they're really trying to cover all the bases.
Yeah.
So unnecessary.
One of my great friends, she's a French academic and lives in Paris, and she's in her mid-40s. And she was invited last summer to, I think it was MIT, one of the universities on the East Coast. And so she turned up, and then she was being onboarded. And so she was sitting with one of the secretaries, and the secretary said, yes, this is your name, and Magali, and blah, blah, blah. And that says here, are you male or female on the form? And Magali, you know, she's a Parisian woman. It got her back up immediately. What do you mean? That, are you male or female? And Magali said, look at this place. Do you know how much this place costs? And it was just a fantastic collision of different society rules. In France, you don't insult a woman. You compliment her and you say she's beautiful or whatever. And this was the exact opposite of what she was expecting. It was wonderful.
If there will be, or if you speak about the titles with your grandchildren, how will you explain the term title?
I don't know. When they ask questions, it normally can answer it by the function. He's he's a teacher. That's why he's got all those letters behind his name. Or, you know, I don't know. Good question.
And we all the time speak about the opposite. Is there any opposite to title?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Because I think you have seen the movie Nobody. It was Terence Hill, and there has been several. And it was interesting because he called himself Nobody. Who is there? Nobody. And it's exactly that no title word, you know. And everybody was confused about it. Everybody, every single one. But titleless, of course, we exist titleless, we can say. I have no university degree.
But then you have to have a discussion about the meaning of the word title in order to understand what titleless means. I think titles are a waste.
That's interesting.
But
and they're actually something they're imposed upon us. I would never choose a title for myself, but I've had plenty of them with the companies I've worked for. But they're not ones I've chosen.
What about the word entitled? It incorporates the title, but it means, does it come from the word title? Entitled.
I will say no, but
And I think it's also, there's another meaning of the word title, which is the ownership of land.
Ah, yes.
So it maybe entitled means that you own a lot of land. What do I know? Originally, going back to the source of the word.
Or it means that you are rich enough to have land, so you are entitled to respect. I'm not.
Yeah, make everybody work for you.
I have to say, I like your sentence, Bill, that title is a waste. It is a very interesting thing. And I feel it is. I feel it is because it separates the society generally. The titles really separate the society. The people who have the titles and who don't. So who don't, they are all the time, generally, or most of the time, they are somewhere on the bottom. the people with longer and longer title, they grow up in the society, on the society ladder. And it generally does not say anything about the quality of a man or woman, about the work which she or he delivered. It does not say generally anything. It's just a word or words or whatever on a business card.
But okay, I'm going to take the other point of view about the titles being a waste. But our our world is so complicated with so many facts and data input that we need ways to categorize. Titles do help you categorize. A bad word for categorize is pigeonhole somebody. Uh, I, I know just what kind of person you are uh, because, because of your title or because of the pigeonhole I put you in. Uh, because it's necessary. You cannot deal with all the incoming facts and they're not usually facts. They're your assumptions, Michael, under the carpet, under the rug, assumptions. But that helps you to get through the day because there's so much data that is flooding you all the time. So
Mm.
maybe they're useful. Maybe they're a waste. Maybe we just have to learn how to deal with titles. This would be a good discussion for critical reasoning class.
It will be. It will be. And I'm really looking forward the first universities and colleges who apply for the accreditation. I'm really looking forward to, because it will be very, very interesting discussion and stories in the universities. Just today, on the 25th of June, there are 17 events named Industry 5.0 in 5 countries. Not a single one related to Industry 5.0. It's quite interesting how it scale up. And we have less than 2 minutes left.
There is, of course, a way of making alternative titles. So if you're a journalist in the United Kingdom, then your real title isn't journalist, it is government propagandist. And if you're a politician, you're a liar. It would be actually nice to have almost a translation of the title. This is the title, but this is what it really means.
That will be a very interesting book. And I think it can be a bestseller because it is almost global. Many of the titles are same in all the languages, or very similar in all the languages. So it will be just one book explaining this. Very interesting. No, we have less than 1 minute time, so I would like to thank you for having and spending the time today on the back of a language to writing it. Let's meet again next week. Have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, be free, and use the title Human wisely, because it's the most valuable one. And see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.